Welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. I'm your host, Geneva Robbins, and every month on this podcast, we'll talk about Reiki, as well as answering your questions on all things spiritual. We are gratefully located in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you all and welcome to the show. Hello, I'm Geneva Robbins, and this is the Luna Holistic Podcast. Today, I have Raven Healy with me. Raven is a Reiki master. She's started at Luna Holistic with us. Welcome, Raven.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. We're going to talk about past life healing and how Reiki can help with that and some of the experiences that we've had and on the past life journey trip. Because, man, it can get weird and trippy. So we'll also talk about that too.
Can it ever?
It can be very strange for my logical linear mind, but also it makes a ton of sense. It seems to, when you have experiences that you can't explain, sometimes dipping into some past life work can come up with a really interesting explanation for some of the experiences and memories that you have. So thank you for being here. I'm excited to explore this topic with you. Before we jump into that, I like to start with our collective breath of gratitude. So this is a little mini meditation. So if you're not driving, you can close your eyes. If you are driving, please keep your eyes open, hands on the wheel. And otherwise, you can gently close your eyes and take a few breaths into the body. Just noticing where you are located on the planet. And letting go with a big sigh of relief. Noticing that whole world under your feet. Getting a sense of that vast energy that's all around you. That loving, support, nurturing energy filled with all of the radiance and life. And just letting your energy connect and harmonize with the energy of the earth. Sending down a deep reverence and gratitude for the earth itself and all her might. For all of the plants and animals and trees and wind and rain. For everything that we're given every single moment of every single day. Just sending out a beam of gratitude. Noticing all of the other people around the world that are experiencing a moment of gratitude right now. With us. And feel that gratitude reflect and rebound. That as you send out gratitude, you are also the recipient of gratitude. And letting all of that lovely energy flow into you now. With a big sigh of relief, you can gently open your eyes. Yay. How'd that go for you, Raven?
That was fabulous. Yeah, I really loved just taking a moment out of my day to reconnect. It makes me feel very supported to know that there's something bigger than me out there that has my back.
Right? Like if you are under the influence of gravity, then
Yes.
you are always held. safely on the planet.
I
Which
like
is
that.
like, if nothing else, there's always gravity, which is I'm connected to this larger energy.
Yeah, gravity's got us.
Gravity has totally got this down. Haha.
Pun intended.
Right. I would love to talk about our past life healing. This is something that we've been incorporating into Reiki sessions for a long time. Reiki can work on everything, it's inherently beyond time and space. So it doesn't matter when anything has happened, whether it's in this life, in your childhood, or anything like that, or in memories or things that you experienced that your soul has experienced before you incarnated on this planet. Reiki can help heal and release anything that might be lingering or keeping you stuck in a loop. And it's pretty powerful and profound sometimes when these past life journeys or memories pop up. We're creating a past life healing session type, which you can do either virtually or in person, combining a bit of a past life regression type meditation with a Reiki treatment at the end, or vice versa, depending on what you need. And the whole idea behind that is that sometimes you have memories pop up, or you find yourself in loops and patterns of behavior. So, this idea of karma that, we just kind of get into a loop of action and we spin on that wheel. And sometimes Reiki is really good about getting us out of patterns that we've been stuck in. It doesn't matter how many lives we've been stuck in that same pattern. Reiki can kind of be like this little psychic tow truck to get us to safe dry land. But I'm curious for you, Raven, like what are you feeling about past lives, and how did you come to both Reiki and past life work in general?
Yes, it's been a very interesting journey because when starting Reiki over, I think, a year and a half ago now, it was never in my field of view to incorporate past life healing into my Reiki work. Past life healing was actually something that I was exploring in my witch practice separately. And it was first introduced to me through past life regression, where I was led through a meditation to visit my past life. But going to this in this way, I was only ever able to kind of view the scene and not really so interact with it or heal anything in it. And then as I was progressing in my Reiki journey more and doing Reiki sessions for people, their past life traumas just kept reappearing. And I was able to work with the person during their session to try to heal some of their own wounds that were coming up in the form of memories or attachments on their physical body.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really working with the same principles and methods that we use for current life trauma and healing as well, which I think is really interesting. Is like, it really doesn't matter when the trauma has happened. Reiki can help sort of release some of those things and lift them off of people. It's amazing to me how much that even just releasing the symbols of these things can clear. One of the things that popped up for me when I was doing Reiki is that I would keep seeing people with shackles around their neck and around their wrists, sort of these symbols of slavery. And because when there's been a wound or a trauma that transcends death, say, when the intent of the injury was to permanently own a person, that goes in really, really deep. So aside from sort of the multi-generational traumatic aspect of that, that can leave sort of wounds on a person's spirit that can be repeated in terms of sort of these maladaptive behaviors that would have made sense if you were a slave, but you are no longer a slave. So it sometimes, and so I would just like start taking these shackles off of people. I'm like, this does not need to be here, and so kind of using your imagination in some ways to just cut them off and then let them go to the light. Doesn't matter how or why these sort of energy forms appear, they can all be released. It's also fascinating to me as well is that some people have really like globe-trotting spirits. So they've been in many different cultures. They've been in many different roles. They can be any and all genders. I think we come to this planet, we become incarnated to learn and to grow. And my philosophy, which sort of dovetails with many Eastern philosophies, is that our purpose in life is to learn and grow and heal and transform. And we get many tries at that. That one life would not be sufficient to learn everything you need to become enlightened. And in Buddhism, they talk about sort of this beginningless time. They don't really talk about like the creation of things, that there's just this eternal flow of time, and that we're going from life to life in a cycle. And we're trying in some ways to learn and grow and heal so we no longer have to come back. If we choose to come back, we can. So there's this idea of this bodhisattva energy of becoming enlightened and then coming back to help other people grow and heal. But I think even those lives are still filled with the regular life challenges. So we're still going to have to do some of that work when we come into our life. So if you think of it as we're all part of this universal field of energy, these unique consciousnesses bobbing in this ocean of spirit, of energy, and that we incarnate into physical bodies coming from that source energy. When we're connected to source in between lives, we have access to this whole field of information. We were chatting before about the Akashic field. Sometimes people call it the Akashic record, or sort of our cosmic blueprint. There's many different ways that people talk about sort of all of that knowledge that's kept in our soul, that's kept in the field of information and energy, that universal life force field that we draw upon in Reiki, which I think is why it's easy for us to connect to past lives with Reiki, because we're kind of pulling from the stream of information. And before we've incarnated, we've got access to all of that knowledge. So we've sort of picked, there's this idea that we've picked and chosen our lives deliberately so that we can learn certain lessons. And at the same time, there's a lot of free will. So we can have some room to play and experience life without too much restriction on us. That the whole idea is to come back and choose, and that when we do incarnate, there's a sort of selective forgetting. So we forget memories that might keep us stuck in patterns of behavior, and we remember things that might help us free us. So that's one thing that's been really interesting in the work that I've done for myself and I do for others, is that the past life memories that come up for people are never random. They're always connected to something going on in their present life. You're talking about like physical illness or like sort of things that are coming up again and again for people. And, my skeptic brain is like, well, maybe that's just a story you're using to explain your current circumstances because your current circumstances are disturbing. So let's create another story in your mind. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, as long as it's a tool that works and is making you ultimately put things in context and move forward, then it's great. There's no harm to it. That's totally fine and okay. And for me, what I've found is that I just have so many weird experiences I have just leaned in to accept. there's just so many coincidences and strange things that have happened along the way that it's an explanation that resonates the most with me. But how about for you? How does, the pathway and journey of figuring out past lives and sort of leaning into that knowledge, how's that helped you?
Yeah, it's been such a big part of my healing journey, I think, not only for just the past life stuff, but I think the generational healing as well, coming from that Indigenous background and carrying a lot of not only my own trauma, but of my ancestry trauma as well. And then also understanding that time is a construct too, because I struggled at first in the first little bit with how can I travel back in time and heal point A and point B and point C. But time is not, it doesn't operate in a linear fashion, right? Everything can exist. So I can exist as I am now, and I can do some childhood past life healing as I am now and heal both at the same time because it's overlapping. It's one cannot exist without the other. And I found that very huge in my own healing journey, especially with my own childhood trauma, but being able to revisit my past childhoods, not only from this life, but from previous past lives as well, and kind of institute that Reiki healing.
Yes, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought up the powerful presence of now. That's really how I ended up connecting to past lives myself, was doing mindfulness work and a lot of the connecting to this idea that everything that has ever occurred happened now in the moment. And that and that's actually the gateway to discovering more about your energetic past and time and what has occurred and what might occur, is you drop into a very deep presence of now, fully immersing yourself in the present moment. And then you travel through all moments of now. Everything that's ever occurred has occurred inside of you. Everything you've experienced has been witnessed and recorded by your soul. So we're not actually looking back into the past. We're like accessing the now moment that happened then. Which is a little bit of a mental gymnastics to get yourself there. But the easiest way is the same way that we tap into presence and mindfulness now in our everyday life, which is to notice what you're smelling, to notice what you are seeing, what textures do you feel, notice the weight of the clothes on your body. What are you wearing on your feet? What sounds do you hear? You go into a sensory experience, and it's remarkable how much you can recover just by doing that. And that's a big part of the meditation experience I guide people through, to help them remember lives that are going to be useful to them. I call it like a past life wisdom meditation. We'll put that up on the blog as well. It's one that you can write out. When we do it together, you can just share your answers, and it can be a little bit more dynamic. But this idea that, sure, there's past life trauma, which we can heal with Reiki because Reiki is beyond time and space. And there's also past life wisdom, which I'm more interested in. What are all the things that I used to do and know? And this idea that if I've already lived a similar kind of experience or dynamic with people, right, then, hindsight is 2020, that I can access a part of me that already knows how to navigate the circumstance, who's been in a similar situation, and can give me the guidance to take my next steps in this present life. And that's a big intention behind all of the work, is to make your present experience as good and free and happy and joyous as you possibly can, and to get out of any sort of loops or patterns of behavior. When I'm a big believer, like when we clear our trauma, we're left with these past life gifts or this past life wisdom that we can then integrate into our current life. And sometimes it's just like we might have been really skilled in a particular something, right? Like I have a past life where I'm a general in China. And so when I accessed that life and healed whatever trauma was there, then I became a better leader. I could access like, oh, I've done this before. I've led people through a vulnerable space to their success. Right. And it's like, what's nice is I'm not telling people to march off to their death. Like, what a great thing. I'm just telling people to shine their light and get their work out into the world and help people with Reiki and meditation and all of the kind of healing work that they do. So it's been very useful.
Yeah. What a nice turnaround.
And another way of like seeing the progression of life after life. So how about for you? Like, what have you noticed and witnessed?
Yeah, the nicest thing that I like seeing is when I'm doing a session for somebody and we're taken back to an old past life that they're stuck in a loop, essentially. Mm-hmm. And they keep replaying this loop over and over again. And it's the same pattern. And being in that scene with the person and being able to help them almost break out of that loop and see it from the outside. And then there's always a piece of wisdom that comes with it. Like if it's a scene where somebody has been betrayed by a loved one, and then they're able to break out of that loop. And then the message afterwards is something along the lines of, yes, this person has betrayed you, but we have understanding and compassion for what has happened. And we understand that they're still learning their own lessons. And it might be something along the lines of their ego is leading them as opposed to their heart. But it just allows you to see it from a different lens with more compassion and pulls you out of that pattern. And then to have somebody wake up out of the session and now holding the word you had said earlier is that wisdom from that. And it's phenomenal to be able to witness somebody break out of that loop and that old pattern.
Yeah. It's very, very freeing. It's very freeing. And things that a person wouldn't have entertained. Like, oh, maybe I can be this powerful, bright, shiny person and just be myself. I don't have to be anything for anyone else, or I don't have to get caught in this loop of behavior, like in that example of going from, it's probably not just one betrayal, it's betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. And it's like, this is a pattern that is like an echo of something else. And usually it's like, usually there's a progression within, with life after life. So usually when we go back into past life memories, they're pretty traumatic, right? It wasn't just a betrayal. It was like an actual knife in the ribs,
Yeah.
So,
and you died.
and you died, but you lived, it's like, and you survived that. And so there's this integration sort of question at the end of when the meditations I do with people, which is you ask that past version of yourself to give you guidance on what you're experiencing now. So just like we can access information and guidance from that past life also understands what's happening presently. And it's all sort of mediated through your soul. And that sort of question, I think, is how they answer it, is like, if you had to do it all over again, what would you choose? And what decision did you make that you'd like to undo? So sometimes the coping strategy is like, never trust anybody, right? But that's not very adaptive because not everybody is the same. There may be some very trustworthy people that you're pushing away all the good ones and then pulling in all of the ones that are that will betray you, right? It's like you have an aversion to the kind people and a strange attraction to the ones that are, not so great. And that when you can undo that decision, and sort of, it's almost like a bit of therapy or coaching that you can do between your different spirit incarnations.
Yeah. And I think at that time in that past life, that particular pattern might have been what had kept us alive and had kept us going. But knowing that pattern in this current life no longer is serving to us and is no longer a healthy pattern for us anymore. Just letting our souls know that we're safe and we no longer need that to survive is very freeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like coping patterns that kept you alive if you had a life as a slave, you know, would have been very adaptive. But when you are no longer in that circumstance, then it isn't helpful. And it's the same with any multi-generational trauma, like residential schools and any form of oppression where people were not allowed to express themselves and lead full, vibrant lives of their own choosing. Anytime that happens, it can create a lot of wounds, and letting that clear and release and shifting into a new pattern. That's the beautiful thing with combining this sort of exploratory work to uncover the story, because some of it's really fascinating. And yeah, so doing that exploratory work, combining it with the healing aspect, so that we're not just going to dig up all of this stuff for kicks, right? Just being curious about it. For me, I'm cautious about just, like kicking over stones to see what creepy crawlies come out. It's like, yeah, we've had many lives, right? Like let's just only access the ones that are going to actually be the best benefit for your present life. And I do feel like our divine teams or spiritual teams, the energies that work with us so that we are able to do this work, they're really good at selecting and filtering only the lives and memories that are going to be the biggest benefit for people. That there's a sort of, if you're not supposed to know about something, is it sort of like peeking at the answers to the exam, right? It's like, or, opening your Christmas present before it's Christmas. There's some information that actually doesn't help you or serve you or make your life better. So if the whole idea of each incarnation is to move you forward so you progress, then we only really want the information that's going to advance us in some way.
Yeah. And like speaking on that too, when being in a session with somebody, there's also things that I, as the facilitator, am not privy to, but that information is still passed on to the person receiving the session. And with the debrief afterwards, they are able to continue on with the scene after I've been kind of told, no, you're going to stay here. We're going to take them off and show them this information. You're not privy to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes there's the spontaneous memories that pop up in regular Reiki sessions. It's like, oh, I think I may have been in World War I. I was like, yeah, you probably were. That makes sense,
It's a good chance.
And sometimes I experience that as a practitioner, and sometimes the person does. Sometimes we go into the same place. It's always whatever information is going to be the best for that person, that's going to move them forward. That's really what tends to come up. And then what I love about Reiki is that because it's beyond time and space, it can help. Anything that does come up is coming up so that it can be healed. And that only the stuff that pops up is the stuff that is fresh and relevant and will move the person forward in some powerful and magical way, which I really appreciate quite a bit.
So, question on that then, does that mean at like different parts in our life, depending on what we're going through, we'll have access to different past lives and we might not be able to return to the same ones?
Yeah. Well, I think once you've had a connection with a past life, you kind of always have that memory, but it has less of a grip on you. That's what I've experienced with some of my own exploration, is that they become less relevant because you've healed that bit, but then some of the information that's come with it. So I had spent quite a bit of time clearing out persecution trauma, especially doing
Mm,
this kind of work where I'm publicly talking about, like, look at me go. Like,
yeah.
you too
Yeah.
can start talking about spiritual stuff in a public forum and not be afraid of being burnt at a stake or, you know,
What a concept.
what a concept, right? Especially with a witchy background, right? It's like, it hasn't gone so well in the past.
No, the
So
witch wound is prevalent.
it is. It is. So that's what I love about doing this work, is that it helps clear that. So people who are healers and teachers and have a lot to say that would benefit people, that they can get clear of those things and then they can start moving forward. And I am like the case study for clearing persecution trauma so that you can get the work out into the world. This would not have happened if I had not done all of that clearing and work. But yeah, so there's definitely lives that come up. And then what's really fascinating is that in those lives that I've been a healer, when I clear the wounds, then I get access to all of that knowledge. And I was like, ooh, there's goodies there. It's like, for me, a lot of it comes through is like, how do I just know that that's not right? Right? Like, I'll go to a ceremony or see something and I'm like, that's been changed. I don't know why. That's not the way it was. And I can't explain it. And it's just a feeling and a knowing, or say with crystals and healing with crystals and what they do and selecting them. A lot of that is very deeply intuitive and it feels like it's drawing on past life knowledge. So I find that like it's almost like it helps you remember your gifts and talents and helps you apply them in your current life. But I find the ones that come up that are the freshest are the ones like that are serving you in that moment. And often what I find is that once the thing has come up and you do the work to clear it, when you're doing past life work, those lives don't come up anymore because they've been cleared. You get this beautiful integration of all of the wisdom, knowledge, the love, because lives are many things, right? Like there's traumas, there's joy, there's wisdom, and then there's like regular old moments, right? Like we tend not to go, we're talking about like standing in line at the grocery store or like trying to pick apples in the market. Like, how many lives have we just been like puzzling over? Like, is it this fruit or this fruit? Like, which one's ripest? Like, or like, how many times just in one life do we ask people, what do you want to have for dinner? Right. Which is a really luxurious question when you think about all of the past lives we could have had. It was like, ooh, we get a choice. It's like, it's not just the one thing that we had for breakfast and lunch, And, so a lot of those sort of day-to-day moments tend to not come back because they're neutral. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just regular. Sometimes those moments or memories do come up, which to me, if they are, like if you go deliberately back into the same life that you were living and you just have a neutral memory, to me, that's like, it's good. Like there's nothing else left there for you to heal. You also get to have this divine eyes perspective. So even the worst trauma you could ever possibly imagine, we can imagine a lot of horrible things. Just turn on the news. When you're doing this work from the perspective of your soul or that divine source or the wisdom inside of you that's eternal, it tends to not be so traumatic because, hey, you survived it. Like, I'm living now. I'm still here. And there can be a really empowering energy to this as well, which is like, hey, I'm eternal. Neat. We're all eternal beings, and our consciousness survives death, which is helps when you want to talk to people who have passed over that you really like. You can access their consciousness because they don't just disappear. Their consciousness, the creation of them is still in the field and in the energy. And when we tap into that energy with Reiki, it pours on through and we get all of the energy that needs for the healing. And we also get any information that might be relevant. I want to recommend 2 books before we close off. And if you have any others, please jump in. But I really like Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss, he's a medical doctor, taking people back to the moment of their trauma and helping to clear it. So doing lots of trauma therapy. And then one of his clients started talking about her past lives. And so he's like, oh, interesting. And enough details came through that he actually could corroborate it. So it's a really good book. It's a good primer on all of this. I really like the work of Denise Lin. She's got many, many books out there and does like soul journeys. And that's sort of where I started. I like her perspective quite a lot. And then on time, there's a book called The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. And it's wild. He's a physicist. So that's like coming at it from just like the ever present, all powerful now. That book is really just about the physics of what time is. And it sort of cracks open your notions of time. So we were talking about gravity before. Apparently, time and gravity are somehow connected. I have to read the book like 20 times. Time is really weird, and even scientists don't really understand how it is, why it works, why it doesn't apply in quantum physics situations, but it seems to apply in the regular flow of our lives. It's weird. Time is weird is the summary of that book. And then Eckhart Tolle has a lot of really great things about the power of now and being in presence. There's many, many books about the power of mindfulness as well. So those are sort of some of my top resources. We'll put all those in the show notes. But Raven, how about you? Are there things, resources, tools, and books that have been indispensable for you on your journey?
I got to give a shout out to Louise Hay.
Right.
I feel like it's a staple on everybody's bookshelf, especially the book You Can Heal Your Life. This has been so important, not only my own personal healing journey, but my Reiki healing journey. And just being able to not only apply it to my current life, but I actually use a lot of the methods and like meditations and visualizations that she has in her book and apply it to my own sessions and use it in past life healings. And it's phenomenal results. So that's definitely my staple.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. Of course.
Yeah.
So in the back of Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life book, she has a list of conditions that body ailments and things like that. The thinking causes that might have, the negative thoughts that might have contributed to it, and then affirmations, which are like the spiritual antidote to that condition. But if you had past life conditions, like maybe you had died from an infection in a past life or something like that, you could use those affirmations. Well, thank you so much, Raven. It's been great talking about all of this stuff with you. I love doing this work. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and blessed be.
Yes, wonderful. And you can check out more on our resources on our webpage. We've got a lot of information up there. You can book in for a Reiki session anytime with any of us, and we can help you through anything that you might be struggling with. Just getting you free is the whole name of the game. And also check out our new session type, Past Life Healing. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the Luna Holistic Podcast. We're so grateful that you are here. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Go to lunaholistic.com/podcast and we'll answer you in an upcoming episode. Be sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also please rate, because you never know where your little 5 stars will go to shine light into somebody's heart today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.